In 1350, what we know as the idyllic French countryside was a living hell. For more than 15 years, the people had suffered at the hands of English invaders. Little did they know that this war would last for another 100 years. But through this crucible of fighting, famine and plague, there would emerge the modern nation of France. England's King Edward III looked jealously across the English Channel. Wanting France for his own, he had added the fleur-de-lis, the symbol of France, to his own royal standard. This was an all-out declaration of war. And in 1337, he invaded. But France already had a king, Philippe VI. As the English burned their way across the land, Philippe's army and his legendary knights marched to meet them, and came face to face with the English longbow. A simple weapon, but the most devastating the knights had ever faced. The heroes of France fell to storms of English arrows. The war engulfed the French countryside. By 1351, the conflict was focused on Brittany. One fight stands out as a spectacular display of chivalry, and a symbol of the wider conflict between the two enemy nations. The Combat of the 30 is still commemorated here in Brittany. It was a dispute between two local families, supported by the opposing sides in the war. The French and English commanders decided to settle it through a trial of knightly combat. Each side would choose 30 champions to fight on neutral ground. France prepared to defend itself against England's finest. Intent on ending the suffering of the French peasantry, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir sent a challenge to the English commander. 30 champions on each side would compete in a tournament for final claim to Brittany. With the battleground of the halfway oak agreed upon, Sir Jean set out to gather support from local knights. As a knight himself, Sir Jean followed the strict rules of chivalry and was expected to protect the local peasantry and ensure peace.
Soyez prêts.
Most medieval tournaments were friendly in nature, held for sport and glory, but the Combat of the 30 was arranged between opponents mired in war. English raids had torn through the countryside of Brittany and brought great hardship to the people.
Si fez vos commandements, reniez vos armes.
Sir Jean spotted an English raiding party attacking a nearby farmstead.
Place, oyez. Je prépare à Oxabit. Si belle, compagnon! Reste pour la besoin!
Je vais vous obéir! C'est comme vos voldres!
Question de vos commandements!
Ils sont descendus!
Liechtenstein, maintenant, sans l'avouer! Un pied ci, un pied là! Comme vos plaisent. Reniez vos armes. Huetz vos donc, en avoué.
Sir Jean's search next brought him to Sir Geoffroy Dubois, whose squires were contending with a detachment of English longbowmen.
Attendez les commandements.
Comme vos plaisent. Je viens.
The knights would use the great speed of their war horses to charge the archers and overwhelm them.
Compagnon, reste pour la besoin. Toilette de votre plaisir.
The English longbowmen fell, but the French knights knew the enemy would attempt to retake the hilltop fortification and steeled themselves for further attacks.
Et compresse. Pointe de Dieu, descend délivrant. Je t'ai fait dans sa bite.
Donnez Jésus votre
Compagnon, reste pour un tir. Liechtenstein, postier.
Restons ferir Engel.
Chacune sait sa place. Reniez vos armes.
With Sir Geoffroy by his side, Sir Jean had secured the outpost.
Reniez vos armes.
Access vos compagnon. Quando je commande, avant. C'est comme vos voldres. Avant, compagnon. Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Retrayez vos amours.
Looking to secure his honor, a young knight held his ground on a bridge in Sir Jean's path.
Obéis. Seul ciel dans un team.
Aveillez votre. Huetz vos donc.
Honorably conceding defeat in the duel, Sir Yves Charel joined the cause.
Je t'ai fait dans sa bite. Bien savez, oyez. Un pied ci, un pied là. Huetz vos donc, en avoué.
Sir Jean entered the staging area for the tournament, where he prepared to choose which knights would join him in battle. Each knight would be accompanied by his squires, young nobles in training to become knights themselves. Sir Jean had selected his champions. As the sun rose, the two sides entered the arena, ready for the first round of combat.
Die Chevaucheurs und nos allons, Chevaucheurs.
Lancière, à votre ordonnance.
Claiming an easy victory in the first round, the French champions left the arena to recover their strength.
L'heure est de besoigner. Apertisez votre courage, compagnons.
Refreshed and reinvigorated, the French knights returned to the arena for another round of combat. The combat of the 30 was about to decide which nation would control the Duchy of Brittany.
Soyez prest, compagnons.
Triumphant, Sir Jean de Beaumanoir and his loyal knights claimed victory. The combat of the 30 had decided control of Brittany in favor of the French. Little did the two sides know, this was just the beginning of a bitter war that would outlive them all. In the 100 Years' War, the English used a terror tactic, a raid through enemy territory intended to intimidate and provoke the French into battle. It was called chevauchée. The principal weapon for chevauchée was fire. And one of the ways it was delivered was with incendiary arrows.
Challenge with incendiary arrows? Keeping them alight.
One type of incendiary arrow was fueled with gunpowder.
You've got charcoal, got sulfur, and we've got saltpeter. Saltpeter is the main ingredient. The more oxygen you put into it, the hotter it burns. Of course, when it's on an arrow, when it's being shot, you've got a turbocharged airstream.
The chemicals are bound together with brandy, left to dry, and poured into a linen bag. The extra long arrowhead is inserted into the bag and then tied off to secure it. It is then sealed by dipping it into boiling tree resin. This resin, which itself is highly flammable, provides a waterproof casing. It also shields the burning gunpowder, so the wind doesn't put it out in flight.
Now that looks deadly, and I really want to shoot it.
The art to shooting an incendiary arrow is timing. Too early, and it will go out. Too late, it will spit at you like a dragon.
That was just evil. That was great.
The word chevauché means horse raid, and it was mobile light horsemen who spearheaded the attacks. They took gold and silver from the churches, valuables from wealthy citizens, and as much food and drink as they could find from anyone. A chevauché was scorched earth warfare to create discontent amongst the enemy's subjects, perhaps even to get them to turn against their king. An army on campaign needed a decisive battle, and a chevauché was intended to taunt the enemy to come out and fight. After victory at the Combat of the 30, the French faced devastating raids from England's Black Prince. But France's King John II was closing in. Jean finally caught the English near the city of Poitiers in September 1356. The French army outnumbered the English by thousands. King Jean himself joined the fight, but what seemed a certain victory for France soon turned into a nightmare. The English longbow devastated the mighty French army. An endless hail of arrows gutted the main French force. Then the English captured King Jean. The fight was over. The Battle of Poitiers was another catastrophic defeat for the French. The English had destroyed most of France's nobility in a single day. Now they turned their attention towards taking the French capital, Paris. The invaders marched unopposed towards Paris. The remains of some of the medieval walls of Paris still stand today. As the English army approached, the terrified locals sought shelter behind these defenses. Could France's capital withstand the full might of the Black Prince's army? The English Black Prince had raided the French countryside without mercy, and now his army had come for the capital. With the English on their doorstep, it fell to the French army and the people of Paris to defend the walls of their proud city. Hoping to avoid open battle, the French began fortifying the city, manning the walls and calling every available soldier to his post.
Attendez les commandements. Maintenant, notre grand salaire. Pour me faire trahir, leurs bâtis s'essuient.
As the French hastened their preparations, several detachments of English soldiers were spotted closing in on the city.
Advertence, tout le monde. Allons, s'adresse tous.
Oyez les ordonnances. Oyez à votre commandement. Marchiez arrière moi, tres tous. Vayez moi besoin. Suis besoin.
Oi, ouais, il vise donc. Homme faut i trej sens nul arrest. Faut-il en besogne. Giovanni a besoin à faire.
Besoin à faire.
En besogne. Lors battige.
En besoin. Oyez les ordonnances. Tous de oil. Mestir des mouets.
The English showed no mercy, burning their way to Paris via 3 routes, each of which was home to villages and farms that supplied the capital.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Oi, lassetz moi exploiter. Lors battige. Homme faut trai. À votre commandement.
Vayez bien. Vaïs. Avec expérience.
Que faut-il donc be... Oil, si toast.
Bon, amen.
En besogne. Si, comme volets. Vayez moi bien, veis. Fouillers ma toute vie. Besoin à faire? Hostia l'ores. Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Ça.
Giovanni Bastir. Oil. Mestir des mouets. Tous de yalla.
Autre Versailles, sur quoi me faut-il traire? Une autre Versailles de l'Est paré. Oui, dame. Guerrière, moi, en soyez coureur. Dictez, je gagne mon gage. Cette bonne assiette. Chessmet, spot avant, train de l'Estière. Police de vol, cheval, on avance pour l'avouer.
16 belles manouères. Besoin. Bayez moi besoin. Lors battige s'essuie.
Besoin à faire?
Ouest, votre
Giovanni
plaisir.
Bastir.
Oil. Mestir des mouets. Lors battige s'essuie.
Homme faut trai. Lors battige vayez moi besoin. Hostia l'ores.
Homme faut trahir. Tous de yalla oretz.
En besoin.
Reste, ouest, votre plaisir.
Bonne besoigne expect.
Homme faut trai.
Out de l'Estière, dictez, on de l'Est au col. Avant, Jens,
Aide-moi vers notre
As the French continued to rally their army, the English took the last of the surrounding villages and had almost encircled Paris.
Oi, mestir de moi.
Vayez moi be...
Oyez, marche arrière, moi trestos.
besoigne. Giovanni Bastir.
Besoin à faire?
Mestir des mouets.
me faut-il faire? Obéleste paraît.
Me faut trahir.
Bayez-moi besoin.
Countryside in flames, and the English at the city gates. The French armies steeled themselves for battle. Now came the capital's true test. Would the mighty walls of Paris hold against a fearsome English siege?
Oi, mestier Oyette, tout le monde. Baisse à la mine.
The Parisian Guard raised the alarm as the English began their first assault on the city walls.
Compagnon, comme votre plaît. Compagnon, si fais
Non, soyons rectums nous en la voie, fratresse.
The French army fought valiantly, repelling the first English attack.
Obéleste paraît. Une autre Versailles?
Besoin à faire? Tout y a Laurette. Bayez-moi besoin. Que faut-il donc besoin? Les bâtis s'essuient.
À Obélestier. À pointer. À Obélestière. Alors,
Chascune moult avance, fouille après.
non soyons si ouais.
Chascune en sa place.
À Часть, comme il vous plaît. Compagnon, ben ici, laisse comme il vous plaît.
Compagnon, si fais votre commandement.
Obéleste paraît.
Oh, me faut trahir? Oui, là. Aime besoin. Veille à la mine.
Advertens, tous le monde. Lors de von Snors alerte.
Compagnon,
Oyez bien, compagnon. Ben ici, laisse commandement. Ça, compagnon. Oyez bien, compagnon, nos annonces. Ben ici, laisse commandement. À Часть vos. Annonce, à par mail. Sur quoi me faut-il traire?
quoi dit Jens, si fais votre.
Часть vos habillement. Obélestier. Oui, à par mail.
Compagnon, méthode moult avance, fouille après.
Chessmet,
Compagnons, reste par un tir.
Bien Bosroy. Seront N6-Way.
à Chessmet,
Dicte-moi ma besoin.
Dicte séparé une Versailles. Mais ici, laisse commandement. À Chessmet,
Preste suisse de votre service.
Dicte votre plaisir.
Besoin d'y faire.
Sur quoi me faut-il faire? Compagnon, ben ici, laisse bien oeil. S'y veille.
Compagnons,
Me laisse te parler.
je préfère ta vie. Chascuns en sablé, comme votre blessed.
Chessmet, des Spartans, frère.
Si le feu est tantôt.
À quoi que je gagne mon gage?
Oil, mais
Oh jetzt, tout le monde. Giovanni Bastir. Oui, da Westfuir.
The French defence of their capital held firm, wearing down the English invaders one by one.
Avant,
Dicte votre. Si le feu est tantôt.
avant, allons. Une small Versailles. Dictez-moi une Versailles.
Liechtenstein, Rectensnoff en la rue. Compagnon, Liechtenstein, vos guerres.
que faut-il donc
Advertence, tout le monde.
en besoin?
Oh yes,
Although the
si,
walls of Paris had been breached, the French could still hold the city, so long as its mighty landmarks did not fall.
Chascune, je t'aime.
Oyez les ordonnances. Las exploit. Dialores. Los batige s'estui.
Chassise boule d'avance vous après. Compagnon, reste pour le Jetstar. Nos découvrir personne.
Que faut-il donc besoin? Bayez moi besoin. Pour vos servir.
Quel est votre plaisir?
Los batige s'estui.
Compagnon, Jetstar. Nos découvrir personne. Ma besoin.
À Chesmes Archière, allons priment.
Oh, me faut trail. À votre commandement. Un besoin. Soixante quemine. Giovanni Basti.
When the Jets of the Bear out Presque suis vos servir. Dicte-moi, compagnon, reste pour la besoin. Chassine, c'est sa tête.
Oil, mais regardez-moi.
Compagnon, reste pour la besoin. Les Jetstar, je te perds en sa vie.
Besoin à faire?
Compagnon, ouais, laisse notre pas. Jetstar.
The enemy grew ever more desperate as their ranks thinned and their hopes of victory faded.
Bayez moi besoin. Dos dialores.
Compagnon, oyez.
Besoin à faire? Sivage out oil. Citost. Giovanni Bastir.
Compagnie, si faites vos commandements.
À Chesmes mos Albalestra, Sivey.
Dicte, jouez votre plaisir.
Moins besoin. Lorsque
Chasse qui comme vos plaistes. Et oui, vers notre
Dicte vertu,
Me laisse parer.
Che fauti donc guerre, i ves donc. En besogne.
L'Ionjans de siège à 6. Onjans and way.
Licenzi fez vos commandements. En avance par la voie.
Chacune cette Ventons nos en la voie.
Dictes ventons nous en la voie.
Jetstar, Bastia.
Dictes vos convent en la voie.
Chacune en sa place. Jetstar, Bastia. Compagnon. Reste par la route avant de jouer après. Jetstar, nos puissances.
Adjustment swans. Oui, avant mij. Overlist winner. Relax les commandements. Oh, s'il sera fait.
Des compagnons. Reste pour les chassis.
Jetsmans was probieren. Overlist bien. Compagnon, ici les commandements.
Compagnon, comme votre peste. Reste par une sanglante et complète.
Adjustment was overlist.
Dictes vos MC souhaits.
À pointe de balle.
Compagnon, reste pour le besoin.
Adjustments must overlist au col. Avant.
Chacune, Jetstarms. Compagnon, reste par ici.
Defeated and demoralized by the strength of the French defense, the Black Prince's army abandoned their siege of the capital. Paris celebrated victory, but this was not the last test the French would face in their struggle to win the war. The battlefields of the 100 Years' War were full of danger. To defend against these weapons, a new type of armor was developed. Plate armor.
Plate armor clad the knight in an articulating exoskeleton of hardened steel. A hard outer shell that still flexes and moves with the body.
It provided impressive protection and was an extraordinary technological achievement.
Now, one of the ways that armor gets its strength is through shape. Both these pieces are made out the exact same thickness as steel, but I can show you there's one stronger than the other. Here's the one with no shape. You see it buckles immediately. If I swap it for one that's been forged to have strength and shape, you can see it's much stronger. It's going nowhere.
It wasn't just the shape that gave it strength. It was also how the metal was treated by the armorer.
Now, the benefits of using heat is it obviously makes the piece more plastic, more ductile, lets me shape it. But the fuel also adds layers of carbon into the outer surface. This helps me increase the hardness and strength of the material.
The art of the armorer was being able to judge the temperature of the metal by eye, managing the heat to create resilience in the metal. The combination of heat-treated metal and rigid shapes meant that armor didn't need to be so thick and heavy, making it much easier to fight in. But good quality plate armor did have its downside. It was very expensive.
Now, not everyone could afford full steel plate armor. For the common man, there is the brigandine. Now, these are made up of overlapping steel plates that are then riveted through a textile outer. This gives you a much bigger range of movement, but is limited and is not as strong as a full steel breastplate. That said, it is much cheaper and much easier to maintain.
At its best, the armored knight was invincible. But armor didn't just provide defense. It was also a weapon and an expression of a knight's power and prestige. Armor transformed its wearer into a work of art. The walls of Paris held out against the English onslaught. England's King Edward and the Black Prince abandoned the siege. They marched towards Chartres to try their luck at conquering a less formidable target. But before they could attack, a violent storm hit the army. Killing 1,000 English soldiers in a tempest of hail and freezing winds. To Edward, this Black Monday disaster seemed like divine retribution. A sign that it was time to stop waging war and make peace with France's King Jean. But even as peace between kings was reached, the people of France were still living in bloodshed and turmoil. Between 1358 and 1370, France was in chaos. Peasant uprisings, rampaging bands of mercenaries, and civil war ravaged the country. Peasants rose in rebellion, killing their lords and wreaking havoc. Mercenary bands also roamed the land. Known as routiers, they had once been hired by the English to fight against the French, but were cut loose when peace was reached. They systematically ravaged and pillaged towns across France. And with King Jean prisoner in England, his son Charles the Dauphin faced homegrown attacks on his rule by powerful French lords, beset from all sides. The Dauphin's forces had to regain control over their own country. Having only recently been crowned King of France, Charles V dispatched his army to the French-held village of Évreux to forge order from chaos. From here, the army would move to extinguish three major threats: bands of roving mercenaries harrying the countryside, a peasant uprising, and attacks from a rival for the French crown, Charles of Navarre. The French army would start by reclaiming the rebel-held villages of Cocherel, Jouy, and Croissy.
Ordine tenequitamus.
Cavale, comprendo.
Parade pour Labourard. Labour Spérance. Parade pour venir. On a six. Quoi de Labour?
Coursor, qu'une grande course. Oyez, oyez.
Quoi de mais? Mandemans, colonnes. Pour la parade pour venir. Camino.
Que demandes? Si voleis! Si!
As the French army struggled to regain control of the countryside, they were struck by a band of English routiers. These mercenaries had been cut loose by the English army and were plundering the countryside in order to make a living.
Attention, es facile, cavalier.
Labour, si, bene. Qued, me, cose sur Mandesqued. Vado Labourard. Si sommes, seco materia.
Veillon, l'inimi!
Parade pour venir, Mandesquito. Si, bene.
The French forces eliminated the routier attack, but more were still raiding the countryside in search of provisions and riches. The routier demanded payment from the French, or they would continue their horrifying raids.
Parade pour venir. Sito. Io ma sono la cosa.
Orchestre. Vassal.
Hommes, preparate.
Civolier.
Lanquier parade. Parade, bene, bene. Simo von vale. Vale, Crito von sit.
Si sommes. Cose sur Amassona. Labour Spérance. Vado Labourard. Parade pour Labourard. Io ma sono la qued me. Vado capere. Qued Labour? Io ma sono la cosa.
Odite.
Felice et beate. Me flect. Benefect. Si sommes. Colonnes, parade. Returno parade pour Labourard. Vado Labourard. Mandesqued. Buona sial pour...
Parate, ambulance.
Si sommes.
Audite, si, comprendo. Come
Parate, intendo. Archier parate. Flanquier parate.
Mande squid. Cose sera massona. Mais
Intendo. Questo forza! Assunto!
Quid labur? Zito, Zitz! Zito! Barats pour laborar. Io ma sono la labur speranz. Vado labur quid me. Cose sera barat por venir. Cose sera mande squid. Barat por venir. Io ma sono la quid labur. Seco materia. Me plect.
Attention, orchestre.
Lanques, sígueme. Parate pour venir.
Labur speranz. Tuts audite. Vado laburar.
Quid labur.
Ci sommes.
Arco
Escolte bene.
Me
Anos la carna.
Sagitaina.
Parate pour
Arco
laburar.
parate.
Quid me. Io ma sono la cose.
Archier parate. Labour spérance. Archier parate. Tout parier être prêt. Lanquier. Préparate. Archier. In avant.
Ordine
Va,
tel
bene.
Sibolier.
Prompt.
Solvere.
Labour speranz. Buon labour.
Attention, novos ordines. Second mandement. Es facile.
Parate pour laborar. Cose sera massona.
Tourma.
Quid me. Returno con materia.
Lanquier parate.
Ci sommes. Vado laburar.
Dolmerien, pace move. Ordine tenens.
Presentez l'encaisse.
Ici. En linea equite. Parate equite. Equite football.
Mande squid. Una sial pour la materia.
Archier parate. Vale. Parate, servicier.
Equites attendent ici.
Che mande.
Si, comprendo.
In taking the village of Jouy, the French army was closer to stemming the peasant rebellion and regaining control.
Six hommes. Morvo. Colonnes, paratis, mauvais colonnes.
Hommes, préparate.
The central monastery town of Cocherel would continue to send out rebel attack parties to weaken the French army.
Mandesquet, ici va tost. Io ma sono la cose.
La bourse Spérance. Cos'è sarà massona? Mandesquet. Vado lavorare. Arco parato. Demandes.
Vale.
Parate, allons-y.
Me plect.
Vale. Lanquier in movement. Tourma.
Parats pour laborar. Cose sera massona.
Demandes. Odite, obedio. Sagita in arco. Arco parato. Hop. Lanquier parate.
Audite, milites.
The village of Kwasi, rich in gold deposits, was a crucial town for the French to reclaim.
In avant, servientes. Vale, perte tourma.
Quedabour, Movenski. Et Chilimam de Mont. Dams de retourna.
Arquier parate.
Parats pour venir. Vado laborar. Parats pour laborar. Io ma sono.
Toutes audite.
Cose sera massona.
Vedi cette beate.
The French army defeated the rebels at Kwasi and took control of the gold-rich village. The central monastery town of Cocherel was still under the control of rebel peasants. The French army would have to take it before they could launch an assault on Charles of Navarre.
Lanquier parate. Moment ici, Tourma. Lanquier parate.
Audite. Si, comprendo.
Parate pour venir. Parier comme préco.
Equites attendent ici.
Parate, arquer.
Et Cheliman demande.
Arquier parate. Hommes, préparate. Tourma.
La bourse Pérance.
Dolme bien.
Lanquier parate. Vale. Lanquier parate. Parates, servientes sieste. Arco parade. Arquière parade. Tourna.
Attention. Novos secundmandement.
Odit. Sagitaina. Sagitaina. Tourna.
Est facile, camarade.
Parate.
Attention. Novos ordines. Commemontes.
Arco parade. Parates servientes.
Dolmevi equites. In avant. Odest.
Presente.
The French discovered the Routier hidden camp and could put an end to the English raids if they could destroy the camp.
Vado laburar, qued labor, cose sera massonata. Qued me, vado laburar.
Sagitaina.
With the Routier camp destroyed, mercenary attacks were no longer a threat.
Hommes, préparate. Végnes, servientes. Parate, arquière. Odite. Ambulance. Parate, ambulance. Courant, vale.
Colones in avant, colones. Returno con materia.
Odite, in avant, servientes. Hommes, allons-y. Végnes, servientes. Au medio. Parate. Entendo.
Quelli.
Parates, servientes. In avant, servientes. Bene, bene. Végnes, servientes. Allons-y. Sagitas misas. Hommes, preparate. Patience. Nintendo. Ambulance. Élément de serviette.
The army took control of the rebel villages, and the peasant uprising was subdued. Keep control over the region, they would need to defend its center of influence, the monastery at Cocherel. Northeast of Cocherel, Charles of Navarre's army had established a fortified camp. The King of Navarre sought to make himself ruler of France as well. He intended to press his claim by destroying the newly arrived royal forces.
Dictes convent en la voie. Non soyons, si le ferait.
Lancière,
Non soyons, jouez.
entière, lancière en plate. Vos œil donc. Les lancières se me pressent portrait. Oh yes, Véici, commence. Lancière, lancière, en place. Compagnon, lance sur feu. Ayez cure aux commandements. Vous me faut trahir. Mon arc est prest. Archers, advançons. Courage, ayez sa tour de guerrier. Ça.
On me faut trail. Oyez les ordonnances.
Véici les commandements. Un jambert, lancière, gardez de votre lancière.
Dictes vos coups, faut-il faire.
Au passe, compagnon. Archer, oyez les commandements. Obéissez aux commandements. Mettos-nous
servir.
Preste portrait. L'ancienne. Oil. Kартах. L'ancienne reine plate. Compagnon. Comme il vous spéras. Dicte me mettre à la courage lancière. En ordre. Compagnon arc.
Dictes vos commandements.
Maintenant, Archers. Compagnon, lance. Quoi faut-il faire? Dicte-moi mon Versailles. Votre preste portrait. De vers où faut-il archer? Quoi faut-il faire? Mon arc est preste.
Bien vos oeil.
Compagnon.
Dictes vos commandements.
Veillez les commandements. Si comme le volet. L'ancienne à votre ordonnance. La lance presse. Archer! La lance presse.
Puisse de vos servir.
Voyez, veillez, commandement. Venez-vous, et c'est des Spartans. Ayez cure, Ox, commandement. Vos oeil donc? De vers où faut-il archer? Ayez cure, un jumper, quoi il n'a folle. Accrostrez-vous par des Spartiens. Compagnon, ayez bien cure. Guerre à parmer. Vectons-nous à la voie, bien brillamment. Un jumper, quoi il n'a folle. Le ferai-je donc? J'obtiens faire. Mettons-nous à la voie bien brillamment. Guerre à parmer. La lance presse. Voyez, veillez, commandement. Venez-vous, et c'est des Spartans. Obéis au commandement. Le ferai-je donc? J'obtiens faire.
Baieți-mă bezweni. Oil, si tost.
Veillez, les commandements. Accrostrez-vous pour des Spartiens.
Pushing up the hillside, the French discovered Charles of Navarre's camp. His front line had the high ground and was made up entirely of archers. The French would have to think carefully about how to approach the stronghold. French army had repelled Charles of Navarre, stemmed the revolt, and held back the raids of the routiers. In the struggle for control over France's lands, the king still clung to power. A war horse was no ordinary horse. In battle, it was a knight's comrade in arms. By nature, horses are prey animals, but the war horse had to become a predator. They had to be aggressive and fearless, to charge enemy lines and to trample anyone in their way. To achieve this, they were specially bred and highly trained to fight, to lash out with their hooves on command. This meant war horses were expensive and so conveyed high status.
War horses were incredibly strong and powerful, but they were also vulnerable. This is a really big target, and it's much easier to shoot a horse than it is to hit its rider. So just as men wore armor, horses wore armor too.
A knight didn't ride his war horse on the road to battle. It was far too valuable. Instead, they were led by the knight's groom. A knight would take multiple war horses on campaign, as he would need to change to a fresh horse several times during battle. Once geared up, the knight, his horse, and his weapons became a highly effective system.
The heavy cavalry lance had a small ring called a graper, and this locks into my arm, forming a hard linkage, so that the lance can't shoot backwards on impact.
The war saddle was also crucial. With its high back, it locked the rider to the horse.
This means with the graper and the saddle, horse, man, and weapon are all locked together to create one giant horse-powered projectile.
The main purpose of heavy cavalry was to charge straight into the enemy and smash through their lines. The impact charge crashed into an enemy with terrifying force. It required horses with exceptional courage and power. With rebels and raiders eliminated at Cocherel, King Charles V faced one last threat to France: the relentless English invaders. Word arrived that the English army was weak and scattered, divided by infighting. The king quickly directed his army to chase down the old enemy of France at Pont-Valin. The French town of Pont-Valin lay directly in the path of marauding English soldiers on the hunt for loot. The town's only hope of survival lay with the French forces camped nearby. The French quickly prepared to ambush the disorganized English raiders and defend Pont-Valin from ruin.
Ascolte bene. Negozio.
Quid me, colones requient mandement.
Parates, servinies, servientes. Cavallo ici. Ambulo. Cum grand course.
The main English army thundered into the valley. They paused to rest beyond the town before launching their raid. A small bandit camp lurked in the valley. If the French could defeat these routiers, they could claim the supplies they had gathered.
Perfecte. Quedme. Labu Movenskito. Porcoliga.
Parat porvenir. Koligansbach.
Arco parat. Si. Cursor obedience. Comprendo. Omes prep si est. Si. Parat porvenir. Tourma. Qued labo. Quito. Anas la garna. Six homes. Agita in arco. Vale. Odite. Audience. Homes preparate. Bene, bene. Arquière parat. Labour spérance.
Six homes. Una sial por la bateria. Labour spérance. Six Movenskito. Retorno con materia.
Parates obedio. Quedme. Parate. Parat porvenir. Quemandes.
The first group of English raiders began their attacks on the outlying farms. After destroying the farms, they would attack the town of Pontvala.
Parat pour la bourre. Vado a massa. Labour spérance.
Odite. In avant, servientes. Allons-y. Parates, servientes. En lavara. Kedman ambulo. Les maçons sont ici. Arco parat. Tourma.
Eccilimandement. Guado caper.
Lanquier parat. Qued labour. Agita in arco. Parate. Entendo. Odite. Audience. Homes preparate. Venies. Servientes. Agita in arco. On descuelga. Oh. Homes preparate. Obedio. Si. Perfect. Bene, bene. Tourma. Arco parat. Parat pour la bourre. Lanquier. Preparat, obedio. Si. Bene. Audit, si est.
Ecceli mandement. Movamos, veletut.
Io ma sono la cose. Parat porvenir.
Colones, parat, se prons.
Parate. Audience. Ambulance.
Parat, porvenir.
Ita in arco.
Cose sera massonata.
Tut sodite.
Cose sarà massonata. Archier parat. Parates servientes. Obedio. Si est. Parates servientes.
La bourse polonaise. Mercat
Audite. In avant servientes.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvalin.
Buon labour.
Ecceli mandement.
Labour spérance. Parat porvenir.
Parat pour la bourra. De la bourra.
Six hommes.
Omes. Allons-y. Allons-y. Venies servientes.
Parat pour labourar. Vado labourar. Chies labourar long.
Parate. Ambulante. Bene, bene. Obiettivo sin retornar.
Mandesqued.
Tut sod vido, si.
Parat porvenir.
Cos'è se quel, me?
Io ma...
Mandesqued. Io masso.
Labour spérance.
Vado laburar.
Labour spérance.
Mandesqued. Yafet. Secco material.
Momenti si archier. In avant. Oye. Bene. Si. Parat. Si. Audience. Haye, entrepreneur. Déroussez. Vade archier. Ambulant. Archier.
Qued labour.
Parate. In avant servientes. Venies servientes. Momenti si archier. In avant.
Si sommes. Sito. Yomas. Escolte bene.
Vado laburar.
Parat porvenir.
Felice feal.
Parate archiers.
Négociamus.
Parates servientes. Ambulance. Audite.
Parat pour labourar. Vide aussi. C'est comme à terre.
Mandesqued. Cos'è sarà massonata?
Qued me. Cose sera massonata.
Omes, preparate. Intendo.
Qued labour.
Espero tu mandament. En le comps.
Homès, préparate.
Négociamos.
In avant, servientes. Bene, bene.
More scattered English raiders arrived and made their way towards Pontvalin.
Vaiet-moi besoigne. Lors batige s'estui. Que fort guerre, Yves donc.
Vaiet-moi, Yves exploitière. Chevalier Bastille.
Alarson, cesse le temps d'adventière, seigneur.
Dictez-moi une bersaise.
Longtemps va-t-il demeurer?
Au chevalier, Alarson, chevalier.
Obeleste paraît.
Long.
Donnez cette vos habits. Très tous, je suis votre serveuse.
Advertent lors devons nos salaires. Bien, oye. Veglière, mériens.
Obeleste, à Chess mes vos. Chess met, je gagne mon gage.
En sommes en ordre. Weitemans de vers l'ennemi, chevalier. Je suis destrière, il me reste tous sans presse. Sommes à Vicouetor et avant mes seigneurs. Soyez prest, compagnons, retrayez vos amouets. Sommes en un incontinent. Avant, mes seigneurs. Si comme votre volonté.
Oyez tous le monde. Je vous amène Mériens.
Obelestier. Obelestier. Avant.
Chevalier, l'heure est de se soigner.
Dictez-moi une persuasion. Avant mes
Oil. Oyez les ordonnances. Oui, là. Tous dialores.
Tous sommes prêts.
Obeleste, à Chess. Obelestier, si vous êtes prêts. Avance, Obelestier. Comme il vous plaît.
Sommes en ordre, je commande. À la sauce, chevalier! Chevalier! Prêt pour entier!
Chess, votre envolée. Avance, Obelestier. Sur quoi me faut-il faire?
Acton. Apertisez votre courage, compagnon. Alarson, pour votre Hatches, Wand, je commande Hatches Metzvot. Avant, compagnon.
Besoigné à faire? Giovanni Bastir.
The English army chose their moment and began to close in on Pontvala.
Attendez les apert.
Obelestrier, à votre sens.
Ça est bel Manuel. En besoin, suis sans quemin.
Une autre personne. Sur quoi me faut-il traire? Chessmetz vos habillés Bénoy.
Chevalier, pour votre service.
Vouée marchande avance
L'heure incontinente. Soyez avant, compagnon. Oui, oui.
Nous cueillons les fruits de...
Hatchesmet, retrayez vos...
Chessmetz, obelest,
Vouée marchande avance nous.
Si comme vos...
Obelestière, allons. Comme il vous...
Alarson, ridets en bon ordre.
Obelest paré.
Chevalier, avant.
Une obelest, s'y veille.
Je reste tout certes. Alarson, chevalier, c'est le temps votre service. Sommes on attendez les Alarson, chevalier. Alarson avance, mes seigneurs. Restons sans foi, je suis vos sommes, si comme cette maison.
After a hard-won battle against a scattered enemy, the French succeeded in halting the English chevauchée at Pontvalin. The English army was not invincible. The French cause was not yet lost. Longbows were powerful weapons, but keeping archers supplied with ammunition was a major undertaking.
This is a modern arrow. Small and lightweight. Pretty much what everyone shoots these days. Compared to this, medieval war arrow. Look at the size of this thing. It's a beast.
A medieval army might need more than 1 million war arrows on campaign, and each one had to be made by hand. It was a labor-intensive business, and the person who did it was called a fletcher. First, a log is split into square staves. Then the fletcher uses a plane to start roughing out the shape.
Ugh, how do I get it round?
Not only have you got to make it round, you've got to make it bobtailed. Look at that.
Bobtailed?
You see that's coming down thinner down that end? There's a natural taper coming down there to that end.
A plane with a curved blade is used to create the taper. This makes the arrow aerodynamic.
This is an incredibly painstaking process for one arrow.
Most of them are just for one shot as well.
Next, a slot is cut to receive a piece of horn. The horn reinforces the nock. That's the notch that fits the arrow to the bowstring. Without the horn insert, the power of a heavy warbow could split and shatter an arrow. Once the horn is in place, the nock is sawn and shaped. Then the fletcher has to attach the feathers to the shaft.
Now what you've got to do is you've got to get rid of the stiffness of the quill. You're going to work it down so it's nice and thin.
So this is dogfish skin?
Yeah, medieval sandpaper.
The feathers are glued in place and then secured with thread. The final process is to arm the arrow with its arrowhead. The person who makes these is called an arrowsmith. From a blank piece of iron, he starts with the part that fits over the arrow shaft. First, he makes the bar flat, then uses a special former to create a socket. The final stage is to hammer out the shape of the head. Arrow stocks had to be prepared far in advance of a campaign. It was impossible to make them in sufficient numbers overnight. A medieval war arrow like this could only be shot from a big, exceptionally powerful bow. And it packed a mighty punch. The French won an overwhelming victory at the Battle of Pontvalin. It was the first time the English had been utterly defeated during the war. But the triumph was short-lived. As England spent the next 60 years amassing French territory through alliances and victories at great battles such as Agincourt. It seemed that nothing could stop England. Who then could have foreseen that a teenaged girl was about to change the course of history? In 1429, France was in dire straits. Nowhere was it more evident than the besieged city of Orléans. The city was completely surrounded by English-held forts. But just a few days' ride away, here in Chinon, there was potential help. The French royal prince, the Dauphin Charles, was holed up in his fortress and under pressure to ride out to save Orléans. As Charles hesitated, a young peasant girl arrived at his court. Her name was Jeanne d'Arc. She claimed to have received saintly visions, giving her a divine task to help Charles become king and drive the English out of France forever. Charles was skeptical, but was soon convinced of her divinity. And he charged this 17-year-old with the near impossible mission to liberate Orléans. To Jeanne, this was the first step in realizing her God-given destiny. In April 1429, she rode out from Chinon at the head of her army to confront the hated enemy of France. Surrounded by English strongholds, and with its last line of defense under attack, the city of Orléans grew ever more desperate. In France's darkest hour, 17-year-old Jeanne d'Arc arrived with the king's army to liberate a city and prevent the fall of a nation.
Pex, veici l'estremandaments. Amantri, avant.
Arbelestre. Chess meswas. Sidei.
Manans, offrance donc. Oui, da ves fouille. Oil, vestir de moi. Toastir.
Besoin à faire?
Que va-t-il bastir?
Bonne besoin.
Commandement in continent. Compagnie, j'ai besoin.
The English had captured the vital fortification, known as Les Tourelles, on the south bank of the Loire. Orléans would live or die on its access to supplies. Recapturing Les Tourelles would be key to saving the city.
Oil, mestir des mouets?
Besoin à faire. Baillets moi besoin.
Soyez prest. Voisance, bien ordonnée.
Chessmets vos habillement. Avant. Chessmets vos... Je gagne mon...
Devers sous devant, Serida.
Baillets mouets besoin. Lors bâti de s'escuit. En besoin. Pour vous servir.
Besoin à faire.
Sommes on Earth.
Où dois-je rider? Compagnon, marchez derrière.
Le mail à la boîte.
Soyez prêts.
Besoin à faire.
Having suffered under the English siege for months, Orléans had sent for crucial supplies, but English patrols threatened their arrival at the city. If Orléans hoped to receive the supplies, the French would have to clear the road of English raiders.
Je veille vos obéis.
Nos soyons. Si vous.
Comme il vous plaît.
Oyez les ordonnances.
Chevalier, prest forestier. Incontinent.
Coréour, si fait que sera.
L'heure est...
Pex, veici les commandes. Allons, ce sens plus attendre. Je fais le commandement. Avant Christ, avant.
The French eliminated the English raiders, granting the supply convoys safe passage into the city. Each time supplies approached Orléans, English raiders would return to guard the road, hoping to plunder the French goods.
Besoin à faire.
Oh, me faut train. Lors bâti que faut-il donc besoigner?
Oyez, présence.
The supply convoy arrived in the city, providing the French army with much-needed gold.
Advertance de le monde. Fouiller est ma bouche.
Rest tous some press. Ridets en bon ordre. Rest tous some press. Donnez-moi vos habits. À la sonne, chevalier. Chevalier, si comme vos voldreuses.
Les coréours sous tête.
Accepte cette force, compagnon.
Je veux voir. J'irai.
Voyez-moi besoigner. Oh, me faut train. Lors bâti.
Oh, me faut trahir. Lors bâti, voyez-moi besoin.
Besoin.
Oil, messieurs des mouets. Giovanni Bastille.
Pex, compagnon, marchez derrière. Soyez prêts. Veici les services. Voisins, bien ordonnés. Les coréours attendent les
Donnez-moi.
Les coréours.
Attendez, les apertisez votre courage.
Commandement incontinent. Perfect à la sonne.
Dictez votre commandement. Maintenant.
Oyez les y fesses comme toi.
Rest tous some prest.
Soyez prêts. Veici les advis.
Obéir à la sonne. Avant, mes
Messieurs de
seigneurs.
moi.
Pex, veici les
Sommes à la sonne.
Check, mess, votre modeste code.
Seeing another supply convoy approaching the city, English raiders took up position on the road. The French needed to eliminate the enemy detachment if they hoped to receive the supplies.
Oh yes, laisse commander. À mon prix, avant.
Sommes en ordonnance. Si comme vos voldrez. Certes.
Commandement compagnon, marchette derrière.
Reste tous, cesse le temps d'adventure, mes seigneurs.
Besoin à faire?
Tous baillets moué besoigne. Giovanni Basti. Oyez tous le monde. Vais à la mine. Advertence tout le monde. Tous dialores. Besoin à faire? Tous dialores.
Dictes vos commandements. Convent en la...
Chevalier, ridets en bon ordre.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans with more gold to bolster the army.
Manuel assouvi.
Oh yes, laisse commander. Je fais vos commandements.
Ensemble, je suis votre serveuse. C'est le temps d'adventure, mes seigneurs.
Courez à la séance.
En besogne.
À la sonne, chevalier. Point commande de Verslanomis, chevalier.
Que faut-il donc besoin? Fouillère reste ma toute vie.
Soyez prêts, compagnons. Chevalier, reste-moi. Votre serveur. Chevalier, je suis votre serveur.
Les courez sous tes allons se sont plus attendre. Si fait comme toi.
Sommes en ordonnance. Chevalier, c'est vertu. Incontinent.
Comment si fait que ça?
Aïe, mestière de moi. Je vais reparier ce matin. On me fera au trail. Fouillère reste ma toute.
On me faut trahir? Lors ce bâti, je s'escuit.
Aïe, mestière de moi.
16 belles manouères. Besoin à faire?
Reste tous avant, mes seigneurs. Donnez-moi vos habits. À l'arson, chevalier. Reste tous, cesse le...
Dictum, et vous avant.
On me fera au trail. Si, vais exploiture. En besoin. Soyez sans
L'ennemi nous achille!
Soyez prêts. Faites si besoin.
Nos soyons.
Honneur, chevalier. Ayette la saute, chevalier. Au de l'estier. Appelez-le. À la saute, chevalier.
Dictes vos commandements.
Faites votre habillement. Au de l'estier.
Fautido. Oyez, les ordonnances.
Non soy convent en la
Veici les phalanges sans plus attendre. Si fait.
Alarson, hors votre service.
Non soyons. Mettons nous en la voie.
Česmec vos aviemet, obelestier.
Somme si comme vos voldres. Somme certes.
Soyez prest. Veici les adultes.
Voyez Brest, compagnon.
Tex. Veit. Amon cri. Avant.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans with more gold to bolster the army.
Besoin après?
Obelest, c'est de votre reste.
En chevalière, reste bon, ridex et votre
Non soyons.
Alarson, hors votre service. Sommes si comme vos voldres.
Obelestre, obelestière.
Bayez moué besoigne.
Reste tous comme prêts. Avant, mes seigneurs.
Oyez les commandements. Allons ce sens plus attendre.
Reste tous comme prêts.
Je passe votre commandement. Compagnon, marchez derrière. Commandement incontinent, compagnon.
Alarson, chevalière. Waitement, chevalière. Alarson, chevalière. Nous sommes prêts. Je suis votre serveur.
Besoin à faire? J'exploite les réparateurs.
Oyez les commandements.
Oi, mais ouais, y vais donc.
Obelestre, Česmec vos.
L'heure est est de besoin.
Pex, voisance, bien ordonné.
Chevalier, cesse le temps de frontière, mes seigneurs.
Soyez prêts. Veici les services. Compagnon, marchette derrière.
Oil, messieurs des mouets. Lors bâti.
O me fa utrai. Giovali basti. Bayez moué. Itrej sos nul arrest. Bien me plaît.
Reste tous sommes incontinent.
Commandant voisance, bien ordonné. Perfect, à l'arsenal.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orleans with more gold to bolster the army.
Soyez si fesses comme toi.
Jetsmets vos habillement.
De garçon, chevalier.
Nos soyons, attends tous en avoué.
Nous sommes en Ayetz la saute, chevalier.
Nos soyons.
Courez, Igwe, avant. Où dois-je rider? Pex, bol destrier.
L'heure est
Dictes vos commandements. Ainsi soit.
Une Jetsmets vos haubelestier. Oui, abarmé.
En besoigne.
Oyez, lors devant nos salaires. Tous y a la homme pas trahir. Vécure mes riens.
Commande compagnon, marchette derrière. Allons, ce sens plus attendre.
À Jetsmets, haubelestier. Allons.
The main bridge leading to Orleans had been destroyed by the French to prevent an English onslaught. Jeanne d'Arc had to find another way to cross to the south bank and make her assault on Les Tourelles.
Nos soyons. Convent en l'avoué.
Que faut-il donc besoin? Oh, bien, base.
À la si comme vos voldrez. C'est le temps de la frontière.
Pex, à mon prix, avant.
En chevalière, reste forestière. Merci pour la nuit. Seigneur! Sommes en obéir cette vertu. On reste tous à l'arsenal, chevalière. Je suis vos...
Haubelestière. Allons.
Sommes avant, mes seigneurs.
À Jetsmets vos haubelestres. Jetsmets vos habillement. Haubelestière.
Donnez moi vos advices. Chevalier, Prechvorrat, Ridet en bon ordre.
Oh jetzt lässt sie besoin. Perfekt. Alarson.
Another trade convoy arrived in Orléans, with more gold to bolster the army.
Alarson, si comme vos voldrez. Je suis votre serveuse.
Compagnon, marchette derrière. À mon cri, avant. Soyez prestes. Petit les advices.
Moi vos advices.
Chessmets vos obelest au col. Avant. Chessmets vos aubel.
Incontinent.
Obelestier. Approchez pas.
Oh non, Ridet en bon ordre. Alarson, chevalier.
Ennemis partis.
Sommes en objectus.
With the western fort destroyed, the French could safely cross the Loire River by this route.
Non soy onvert en la voie.
Isontian notatin.
Obelestier. Obelestier. Alors.
Chevalier! En votre service! Donnez en votre service!
Tex, présence, bien ordonné. Compagnon, marchette derrière. Si fait que
Alarson, chevalier. Avant, mes seigneurs.
Chessmets vos obelestier.
Nous sommes restes. Wait commence de vers l'ennemi, chevalier.
Chessmets vos obelestier.
Nuevos amigos. Somos chevalier.
Un geste, alors, un parler. Un geste.
Besoigné à faire? Lors batige s'estui.
Que faut-il?
Vestiaire de moi.
Test vertu. Das arme Viertes!
Courez où, compagnons? Marchez derrière! Avant, crime! Avant!
Chevalier!
Que fauti donc?
Je suis votre serveuse.
Les cours, je fais vos commandements.
Dictes vos commandements. Incontinent.
Commandement in allant ce sens plus attente.
Oyez, compagnon, nos allons.
Oyez les commandements.
Chevalier, ridets en bon ordre.
Soyez, j'ai besoin. Je fais vos commandements.
Honorus ultra Versailles.
Fex, veici les commandements.
À l'arson, chevalier. Ayez la saute, chevalier.
Un geste, s'y veille.
Fex, si pecte sera.
Soyez prest, compagnon.
Présence, bien ordonnée. Compagnons, faites tous en bataille.
Honor, je ride au vos volets. Nos prenons trop de trucs! Mon destrier rimaigne! Mon destrier rimaigne!
Je gagne mon gain. Allons!
Si comme vos vendre, à la son chevalier!
Geste, bien allé.
Dick perfect à la sonne!
Tous sommes prêts!
Je fais vos commandements!
Sommes en chevalier!
Les courez-où sont insectes!
C'est son votre service! Donnez son votre service! À la son chevalier!
Les Tourelles was the linchpin in the English siege of Orleans, blocking the main supply route to the city. If Jeanne d'Arc could capture it, Orleans would finally be liberated.
Si comme vos vendre!
Dictes rectum.
Ici continue!
Un geste, avant, comme le tien. Je gagne mon gain.
Vous devez ça avant!
Belestre.
Sommes en avant, mes seigneurs!
16 mètres.
Au reste, tout ridets en bon ordre.
Oh, me fa au trail. Je vous amène mes riens.
Honor, je suis votre serveuse. Mon destrier reste tous some... C'est le temps d'adventière, mes seigneurs.
Jets Metz, vos oui, à Marmeille. Avant, au Belestière. Au Belestière. Jelly Chen, marchez! Au Belestière, fermez! Jets, je gagne mon gate. Au Belestocol, avant!
Chevalier, presse, avance.
Engin boss attente. Second poste commandement. Orac tendon ordonnance. Esbatet stance.
Dictable.
Limoton.
Utan bien assouvi.
Aubelestier, Obelest au col. Avant.
Limotons, attente. Christus, au vostre service. C'est le temps de marcher, messieurs. Jésus, votre service.
Reste tout est assis.
Aubelestre, je gagne mon gate.
Thomas, avance, mes seigneurs. À l'arson, chevalier. À l'arson, chevalier. On reste tous, je suis votre serveur. Chevalier! Ajax, la ridets en bon ordre. Incontinent.
Allons, ce sens plus s'attendre.
Sommes
The king's army drove the hated enemy of France from Les Tourelles. With the main road to the city back in French hands, the English abandoned their long siege of Orléans. Celebrating a momentous victory at the head of the French army, Jeanne d'Arc would forever be remembered as the Maid of Orléans. A medieval army on the march was a city on the move. No expense was spared to keep knights and nobles in the lap of luxury.
Knights lived in luxurious tents called pavilions, which had all of their furnishing, proper chairs and tables and tableware, real beds with fine linens, even wall hangings.
All this furniture had to be transported, and that's on top of what was needed for combat. Weapons and armor needed an army of artisans to maintain them.
The armourer's job on campaign was one of maintenance, constantly repairing, knocking out dents, simply changing straps, or replacing rivets that had broken. If you think of the knight as a race car driver, the armourer is his chief mechanic. Without him, he would not be able to function.
Also following an army was a band of opportunistic civilians, the camp followers, all vying to sell their services and goods to the soldiers. When on the march, most of the thousands of soldiers were mounted. Each knight would have at least 6 horses, all needing grooms, farriers, and fodder.
The royal household brought with them their clerks, their priests, essential for men who feared they might die in battle. And of course, their cooks.
The common soldier subsisted mainly on bread and a thick soup called pottage. It was an altogether different story for the knights.
A knight on campaign would expect the best food. So we have game, we have fine meats, we have fruit when it's in season, always cooked, because food is tied in with health as well. That's very important. And I'm just finishing off a dish here of spiced meatballs with a red wine and pine nut sauce.
French and English armies could be on campaign for months on end, maneuvering and skirmishing, until they took to the field for a decisive battle. Jeanne d'Arc had liberated Orléans and put the English army to flight. However, as the English retreated, they became an obstacle for Charles the Dauphin. He needed a clear path from Chinon to Reims, where he would be crowned king. Nearing the town of Patay, the English sought to regroup. But Jeanne d'Arc and her French army were closing in. Fleeing the Loire Valley, the English were on the run. As they retreated northwards, a French vanguard was in close pursuit.
Si comme vos voldrez. Avant, compagnon.
Caught out of position, the French faced a surprise attack from the English rearguard. A detachment of English archers blocked the road with palings, an effective measure against cavalry. The French vanguard had to clear the road if they were to call in reinforcements.
Avertissez votre courage, compagnon. Quand je commande, avance. Retrayez vos amours. Quand je commande, avance. Certes.
With the road cleared, the French army could safely bring in reinforcements from nearby allies. The French army paid their ally and received a detachment of reinforcements.
Triste à l'arson, chevalier. Chevalier à l'arson continent.
Ici Novels commandements.
Sommes en ordonnance. Avant, mes seigneurs. À l'arson, chevalier. Soyez prêts. Access vos compagnons. Pour votre service. Incontinent. Avant, compagnons.
Hearing the rallying cry of the English coming from the village of St. Sigmund, the French were alerted to the enemy position. The French recaptured St. Sigmund and prepared to rendezvous with Jeanne d'Arc. But a large English detachment had set up a blockade. So long as that force was in place, the French vanguard could not reach Jeanne. The French army saw a chance to bolster their numbers and sent payment to their ally in return for reinforcements.
Ainsi souhaité. Claire. Jerry de Sommes. Oui, j'obtiens père à vos services.
Access vos. Annonce. Apparme.
Oui, sunt palicens d'armes postières.
Archers, oyez commandements.
Adresse tous sommes prest.
Les autres, les commandements. Compagnon, preste pour la besogne.
L'heure est de besoigner. Si comme vos voldrez, je suis votre serveuse. Avant, compagnon. Retrayez vos amours. Je chevalier de Jets et votre oncle. Soyez prest, compagnon.
Je laisse
With the English blockade destroyed, the French vanguard rejoiced at the arrival of Jeanne d'Arc and her troops. With their rearguard eliminated, the remaining English forces would now seek to escape the valley through the town of Patay. 3 enemy regiments were converging on the town along 3 main roads. Jeanne had either to stop the regiments on the roads or race ahead to fortify Patay itself.
Suisse et Narson hérite.
Soyez prêts, je fais vos commandements. J'ai besoin. Allons ce sens plus attendre.
En Часть, de vers où faut-il archer?
Compagnon, reste paratier.
Commandement et présence, bien ordonné. Si fait comme toi. Perfect à la sonne. Si fait que sera. Hamon crie, avant. Compagnon, marchette derrière. Perfect à la sonne. Si besoin. Compagnon, marchette derrière. Si fait comme toi.
Où doit être ça? Avant!
Faites. Vite.
Mais ici, laisse commandement.
Hamon crie, avant.
Voice l'ennemi!
L'ennemi nous hostile! Des ennemis edge approuvés!
Compagnon, croyez-vous bien?
Sommes on ordonnance.
Chefs. Quoi sont vos envoyés donc?
Oh yes, laisse commandements. Allons ce sens plus attendre. plus attendre.
Les coureurs, je fais vos commandements. Reste tous en la brève.
Soyez prêts. Je fais vos commandements. Compagnon, marchez derrière. Compagnon, reste tous en bataille. Courez-vous à l'Arcéon et preste.
Archers, prenez ne demeurez.
Chacun en sa place. Jens Dars.
Honor reste nommé.
Commandement incontinent. Compagnon, si pecte sera. Perfect, à l'arson.
Sending gold to their ally, the French army received fresh reinforcements.
Oui, à part mail.
Tex, veille présence, bien ordonnée. À mon cri, avant. Si fait.
Oyez bien, compagnon. Bien oeil.
Commandement incontinent, je fais vos commandements.
Soyez prêts, compagnons.
Tex, veille les.
Attendez, les
Compagnon, marchez derrière.
Access mes vos. Compagnon, nous allons.
Soyez prêts. Veille Chile. Allons, ce sens plus attendre.
Compagnon, veille ici.
Si pecte sera.
Dresse tous.
Acest mes vos, archer, allons priment.
Nous sommes à l'arson, chevalier. Avant.
Oui, chevalcheur, en pleine course.
Au belestier, au belesto.
Chacun en si fait vos commandements.
Courez vers, j'ai besoin.
J'ai besoin.
Reste tous sommes prêts.
Les chevalcheurs.
Courez où? À l'arson, courez où?
À l'arson, ridet sen bon ordre.
Compagnon, preste poratier. Moult avance voué à traire. Envoué vers notre porte, Jens Dars.
Chevalier, reste.
Courez-vous, Pex, beau destrier.
À l'arson, chevalier.
Preste portrait, le ferai-je donc? De vers j'obtienne père.
Au beleste.
Au chevalier, reste pour un stier.
As the forces of the valiant Jeanne d'Arc entered the town, the people of Patay rallied to her cause. After an intense pursuit and a hard-fought battle, the French crushed the remaining English army, thwarting their desperate retreat. Now the triumphant Jeanne d'Arc could safely lead Charles to Reims for his coronation as King of France. Medieval soldiers suffered brutal injuries in battle. Their chance of survival lay with barber surgeons. From cutting hair to removing limbs on the battlefield, the job of a barber surgeon was varied, and so were their tools.
600 years ago, surgery was very different from today, and this is some of the kit that the surgeons of then would be using. For example, amputations. This bit of kit was used to cut through the skin. Then you need to get through bone, and this is what they used. Believe it or not, this was used for neurosurgery. But what they didn't have at the time was anesthesia.
Despite carrying out major surgery, barber surgeons had no formal training.
What they learned on the job, and the place where they practiced the most was the battlefield.
This was also a time when new surgical techniques were developed, particularly when it came to saving the life of a future king. In 1403, 16-year-old Prince Henry was injured in the Battle of Shrewsbury while fighting rebels trying to overthrow his father, King Henry IV.
The arrow penetrated his right cheek and became lodged at the base of his skull. He was very lucky it didn't kill him instantly.
Prince Henry pulled the arrow from his face. The shaft came out, but the arrowhead remained lodged inside.
They needed to get that out before infection set in and killed him.
To the rescue, celebrated surgeon John Bradmore. Bradmore recorded what he did to save the prince's life, including a picture of the tool he made to extract the arrowhead.
And it works by ensuring that the tip is closed and then inserting it along the track caused by the arrowhead until it meets the arrowhead.
Then the screw is turned to expand the tip, locking it in place inside the arrowhead.
And then ever so slowly and gently, you extract, making sure that you don't lose it along the way. I'm amazed by the skill that would have been needed to do this successfully. Can you imagine how good that felt when that came out?
The young prince survived to become King Henry V, hero of Agincourt. But perhaps the real heroes of medieval medicine were the barber surgeons, who saved countless lives on the battlefield. The Battle of Patay was a disaster for the English. The French wiped out their bowmen and drove their forces from the Loire Valley. Now for Jeanne d'Arc and the Dauphin, the way to Reims was clear. The Maid of Orleans rode with the Dauphin through the streets and was at his side when he was finally crowned King Charles VII of France. But less than 2 years later, Jeanne was captured in battle, sold to the English, and put on trial for heresy. She spent 6 months locked in a dungeon, awaiting her fate. King Charles, who owed his crown to Jeanne, did nothing to help win her freedom. She was found guilty. On May 30th, 1431, Jeanne d'Arc was brought here, to the old market square in Rouen, where she was burned at the stake. She was 19 years old. But what the Maid of Orleans started could not be denied. Her victories were the first in a chain of successes for France's military. Liberty was within reach. Thanks to the leadership of two brothers, Jean and Gaspard Bureau, the French army became experts in the use of artillery, transforming it into a disciplined, modern fighting force. In 1448, King Charles was ready to make a major move against the English. He vowed to retake Normandy. The 7th Army would soon have access to the most advanced artillery in Europe, thanks to the master gunners, the Bureau brothers. While the brothers developed their weapons, the king laid plans for their use. He would bring Normandy back under French control. The first phase of the king's plan would give the Bureau brothers time to perfect their cannons. He tasked his army with claiming a base of operations. With the town under French control, the Bureau brothers now had the use of the university and of their own siege workshop. Their next goal was to learn all they could about recent innovations in the mixing of the most potent gunpowder. While the army waited for their new weapons, they kept a watchful eye for any English attacks on the town.
Voyez bien, compagnon.
Besogne à faire? Giovanni Basti. Que faut-il donc besoigner?
A party of English soldiers approached the French base, intent on reclaiming the town.
Compagnon, comme il vous plaise.
Voyez, tous devant.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Ici, laisse commandement. La chest met boss. Comme il vous plaît.
Homme faut trahir. Est-ce qu'il y a des besoins à faire? Lors batige s'essuie.
Homme faut trahir. Un besogne. Lors batige s'essuie.
Licenz auf de l'Estier.
Dicte-moi.
Un besoin.
Courage, lancière. Au passe, compagnon.
A chest mes vos auf de l'Estras. A chest mes vos.
Besogne à faire? Bonne besogne est fait. Lors batige s'essuie. Oyez les ordonnances. Fouillère reste ma toute vie.
Que faut-il donc besoigner?
Voyez-moi besoigne. Que faut-il donc besoigner? Giovanni Bastir.
Messieurs des mouets.
Oyez bien, compagnon.
Avez broniec vos armes. Więc vos dom.
Obelestier.
Chask moult avance.
Mais ici, les annonces. Apparemment, compagnon, ça compagnon. Oral.
Inches met vos.
Nos despartans, brillamment. Retiens vos. Nos diguapissons.
Reste suisse.
Oyez bien, ça compagnon. Oral.
The brothers worked tirelessly to cast their gun barrels, but they still needed insight into the latest gunpowder chemistry.
J'attends ma besogne prochaine.
Soudain, fais ici de nouvelles commandements. Ça, guerre désgâte les choses. Je fais votre commandement.
Avoué de vertu. Tout suit à votre plaisir.
Soyez prêts.
Votre voué guidera. L'avoué de vertu. Je vais où être doué.
Je vais où être doué.
Nos carrels sont prêts. Nos arbalètes avant et sans mêler. Ne clamez pas, avancez.
Qu'attendez-vous de moi?
Paix, soudain, avant et sans mêler.
J'attends vos advices.
Tout suit à votre plaisir.
Paix, compagnons.
Soyez prêts. Envoyez.
Causez-vous. Forestier, il nous soudain. Fais ici de nouvelles commandements.
Obéir est divine vertu.
La suite pour vos équipes.
J'attends vos advices.
Paix, soudain. Ça, guerre désgâte les choses.
Tous, je m'inclinerai à votre...
Causez-vous. Forestier, il nous faut marcher. Les arbalètes sont accessibles. Allons, arbalétrier. Avant.
Frère,
Ne clamez pas, avancez.
Voyons les commandements qui...
Paix, compagnons. J'ai pourvoué tout à dire. Ça, nous en tardons pas. Causez-vous. Je fais comme il vous plaît.
J'obéis à votre avis.
j'obéirai.
Arbalétrier, soyez suspect.
À votre sens, tranquille.
Aux arbalètes, soyez je stoppais.
Tout suit, s'estuit vais-je entreprendre. J'incline à votre volonté, si ferai-je comme émandé. Si tel est votre bon plaisir, ainsi sera fait. S'estuit vais-je entreprendre, et sera fait.
Soudain, ne clamez pas, avancez. Prêt, Forestier, avant. Paix, compagnons, j'y pourvoué.
J'attends ma besogne prochaine. Ce sera moule bien assouvi, verrez.
Ils exploitent à nos artiers!
Nos carrels sont prêts pour frère.
J'obéirai.
Arbalétrier, soyez assustés.
Obéis, si ferai-je comme émandé.
Brothers had successfully combined a powerful gunpowder recipe with sturdy cast iron gun barrels. At last, cannon production could begin. While the brothers turned out their cannons, culverins, and riboldequins, the French army would bolster themselves for the coming fight.
Causez-vous! Oyez le forestier, il nous faut marcher. Je fais votre commandement. Compagnons, je fais comme il vous plaise.
Quels sont vos commandements? Pour vous servir, suis-je le...
Soudard! Soudard, ça! Guerre désgâte les choses. J'y pourvois tout à
Poste, j'enjambe l'avoué de vertu.
Point de repos pour les hardis. Je prends plus.
Point de repos pour les hardis. Restez à la Bastille.
compagnons. Ici les commandements. J'oeille et j'obtempère. J'y pourvois.
J'obéirai. Fréresse maintenant,
Je fais votre commandement.
Point de repos pour les hardis. Voyez tous, voici les commandements.
Or ça, bien vous plaise l'achèvement.
Je pars pour Griroué.
J'attends les commandements.
Qu'attendez-vous de moi? J'attends ma besogne prochaine. Suis pour vos édiers. Je prends cure de ce manège.
Attendez-vous de moi. Suis pour un hôtel à Bastille. J'attends vos advices. Je me mets en l'avoué.
Soudain, je fais comme il vous plaît.
Quel besoin que vous commandement pour courir? Colobrine, chargez!
J'attends les commandements et les batailles.
Moins de repos pour les hardis.
Ah, je suis fier de mon œuvre.
La victoire à ceux qui appointent.
Ayez cure aux ordonnances, soudard.
En paix, soudard.
À la bataille.
J'y pourvois tout à tir. Causez-vous. Avant et sans mêler.
J'attends ma besogne optimée, j'y vais. Colobrine, on attend bien commandement.
Causez-vous, clamez.
Oyez, oui.
Une œuvre bien assouvie.
Tienez bien vos colianaises.
J'ai peu de...
Ben, compagnon, j'oeille et j'obtempère. J'y pourvois.
Assez je suis fier de mon œuvre.
J'attends les commandements. Suis pour 13-12, écoute les ordonnances. Je pars. J'attends ma besogne prochaine. Je prends cul.
Qu'attendez-vous de moi?
Advertence. Voici les commandements.
Reste tous, écoute les ordonnances.
Bien, bien.
Vos carrels sont prêts pour prêts. J'ai pourquoi tout à fait.
With the mine under French control, the Bureau brothers had access to an abundance of iron for their gun barrels.
Avez-vous commandement pour moi? Votre plaisir est ordonnance. Oyez tous. Voici les commandements.
Point d'agré, reste de catholiques. Nos carrels sont prêts pour prêts.
Voyez tous, voici les commandements.
Notre ennemi embranché criez, ne clamez pas. Avancez.
13-12, écoute les ordonnances.
Avez-vous comment... Will, je l'ai bien compris. Je prends cure de ce manoir. Presse 8 pour vos édiers. Ce sera moule bien assouvi, verrez.
Soudain, ça. Guerre désgâte les choses. Le champ n'attend point.
Point de milliardise. Faites l'effet de bruit.
Nos arbalètes sont arbalétriers de rester.
Taillez votre commandement.
Vous m'inclinerez à votre plaisir.
Tienez bien vos colombries. Dans la quintaine.
Arbalétriers, soyez assaisonnés.
En bataille, Soudard.
J'attends ma besogne.
Oyez tous. Voici les commandements.
J'allais au lieu. Un hostel à Bastille.
Point de repos pour les armées.
Paix, Soudard. Fais ici les commandements. J'y pourvois tout attire.
Soudard, fais ici les ordonnances. Ayez cure en ordonnance. J'ai besoin. Soudard, oyez, ils ont mestier de nous, la Jus.
Nous attendons vos commandements. J'attends les commandements.
Attestez vos comptes de feu, Soudard.
Victoire.
Avant, mesprit de Guffre.
Les soudats, c'est comme vous voulez.
Paix, Soudard. Porastier, il nous faut marcher. C'est bon.
Ils exploitent nos arciers.
Je fais votre commandement. Ça, ne nous entendons point.
J'attends les commandements.
Où donc m'envoyez-vous?
Colabrine en attente de commandement. J'attends les...
J'attends ma besogne. Assigné. Heure est de partir maintenant.
Votre vouloir guidera mon air. Ceste gloriose relique, doit être à notre nation.
Quelqu'un t'en abattre.
Causez-vous. Oyez les commandements. Avant, bougre de limaçon.
Deus adjutor.
Soudain, j'ai pourvoué. Avant, et sans mêler.
Point de miniardise. Voué. Attends, c'est clair.
J'obéirai comme ainsi sera fait. J'enjambe l'avoué de vertu.
Nos carrels sont envoyés mourir.
Nos attentes j'y ai cure.
Corail, très bien.
Soyez freres, tantos nos faut-il advancer.
Paix, compagnons. Avant et sans mêler.
Ils ont mesti de nous la juste.
Bien comprendre. Reste d'être archier. Je prends cure de ce manoir.
Obéir est divine vertu.
Advertance. Voici les commandements. La suite pour vos édiers.
Où dois-je traire ce carrel?
Tout est ordonné. Ça, engin. En l'avoué. Dicte-nos nos advises pour votre engin. Advises pour votre engin. Dicte-nos quelqu'un t'en abattre.
At last, the French artillery weapons were ready for deployment. After years of preparation, the time had come for Charles VII to make his move. To take back Normandy, he would need to recapture the stronghold of Rouen, a critical fortress from which the English had been attacking Paris. Rouen walls would face an explosive trial against the mighty force of gunpowder.
Point de repos pour les hardis.
Engin de siège hardi. Ils vont partir de... Engin de siège.
Nous attendons vos commandements.
Advise pour votre engin. Advise pour votre engin.
J'attends vos advices.
Tous écoute les ordres.
Advertance. Voici les commandements.
Employé, j'obéis à votre avis.
Joy, je fais comme il vous plaît. Je fais votre commandement.
J'attends les commandements et les batailles. J'attends les commandements. En l'avoué vers la part. Où donc m'envoyez-vous?
Advise pour votre... Avez-vous comment? Ainsi soit-il. Dicte-nos quelqu'un t'en abattre. Advise pour votre... Ainsi soit-il.
Le champ n'attend point.
Et soudain, je fais vos commandements.
Colobrine, charge Colobrine. Allons.
Les engins de siège sont prêts. Engins de siège, ça faute à la... Dicte-nos à part main.
Qu'attendez-vous de moi?
Engin de ciel, les gaz dictent.
Nouvelle tourment pour les Colovrine. Oui. J'attends ma besogne prochaine. Nostal à Bastille.
Je suis presse. Paix, compagnons. Si les commandements, le champ n'attend point. Soudain, fais ici de nouvelles commandements.
À tout est ordonné. Les engins de siège sont prêts.
C'est fait. Avez-vous commandement pour moi? Will, gilet bas compris. À vos ordres, suis. Ce sera moult bien assouvi, verrez. Ce sera moult bien assouvi, verrez.
Soudain, nous avons nos commandements. Avant, et pour les de nos soldats à battre.
Colovrine en attente de Colovrine au col. Avant!
Nos arbalètes sont à telle bête. Nos carrés, attisez votre catène et soudain, soyez prêts.
Suis-je trop chenu pour ce faire?
Colovrine chargée.
En soudain, soyez...
Assistez vos feu, soudard.
Nous attendons vos commandes.
Où suis arbalétrier? Suivez le courroie, arbalétrier.
Dicte-nos quelqu'un à battre. Nous avons les commandements reçus. Suivez l'engin. Avant, allons. Despêche.
C'est quasi assouvi. Évidemment, à part main. J'ai besoin à part main. Très bien. À votre ordonnance. Très bien.
Moi, je me blesse d'estrachier. Envoyez, soudain. Suivez l'artillerie. Nos ordonnances sont la sus. C'est qui reste.
Moins de militaires d'archivaux.
Je fais mon commandement.
C'est une merveilleuse victoire. C'est l'heure de ça. Les engins de siège.
Faites-moi fiant.
Soudain, marchons de rue.
Les engins de siège, ainsi sera fait.
Très bien.
J'y vais de mon pas.
Vous
Bien.
soyez prêts, frères.
Dicte-nous. Nos mouvements l'artillerie. Engins de siège, assis. Ils vont partir de la ville. Quel triomphe. Ils sont à l'heure. Je délaisserai mon acier. Sécurez l'engin de siège. Envoyez. Suivez l'engin, soudain. Ainsi sera fait.
Les archers ennemis infligent notre bataille.
Suivez l'engin. Avant, allons. Les engins de siège sont prêts. Engins de siège, ça faut aller. Engins de siège assis, ils vont bâtir de notre île. Très bien. Tout est ordonné. Les engins se meuvent. Si nous avons ainsi soit-il. Engins de siège assis. Ça, engin. En avant. Oui. engins de siège sont prêts. Très bien. Nos ordonnances sont la sus. Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances.
Moult me plaît d'œuvrer en forest.
Point agré estre de Catène.
Les engins de siège sont prêts. Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances. Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances. Tout est ordonné. Engins de siège, c'est un aller.
Loin, bien. L'heure est d'aller au bruit.
Je fais votre commandement.
Envoyez-moi à la bataille. La gloire, nos...
Soudain, nous avons nos commandements. Suivez l'engin. Avant, allons. Envoyez Soudain, suivez l'artillerie. Suivez l'engin, Soudain. Will, à part. C'est quasi assouvi. Sécurez l'engin de siège.
Ne bougez pas.
C'est quasi assouvi. Ainsi sera fait. Ainsi sera
Bien moult crevé.
Bore down on the formidable walls of Rouen, ready to launch their final assault on this key English stronghold.
Engin de siège, ça faut aller. Les engins de siège sont prêts. Engin, c'est resté. Quoi ne faille votre train. Dicte-nous très bien. Change à tout. Engin de... Tout est ordonné. C'est quasi assouvi. Ils vont pâtir de notre île.
J'attends vos justices. Je me mets en l'avouer.
Engin de siège. Engin de siège.
Rouen walls were breached. The French army had at last exposed the heart of the fortress. Having lost the walls of Rouen, the English made a last stand to hold the city. The French would need to destroy the buildings that had housed the English army and drive out the enemy for good.
Les engins se meuvent. Soudain, nous avons fait. Fais ici les commandes. Quelle besogne.
Nos gendarmes, en l'avouer.
Nos ordonnances sont envoyées soudain. Suivez l'artillerie. Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances. Soudain, nous avons le commandement.
Gloire et victoire.
With the English scattered and their buildings in ashes, the French had recaptured the critical fortress of Rouen. Charles VII had proven that France was no longer the underdog in the 100 Years' War. After decades of bloody dispute, Normandy was finally back in French hands. During the 14th century, the face of war in Europe changed forever. Thanks to a substance invented by the Chinese while searching for the elixir of life. Gunpowder. One of the first guns used on the battlefields of Europe was this, the bombard.
This is a large stone-throwing gun for moving big projectiles like this up and over and through castle walls.
Before the invention of the cannon, castle wall-busting projectiles had been thrown by trebuchets.
This is what took over from the trebuchet. Far easier to move from castle to castle.
Its design was simplicity itself, drawing on the skills of the barrel maker.
This has metal staves, lengthways, and then lots of hoops holding those staves under compression. So this is why we now call this the gun barrel as well.
The bombard was no more powerful than a trebuchet, but it did have a psychological impact on the enemy.
If we take it back several hundred years, and the loudest thing is a cockerel crowing or a brawl in the pub on a Saturday night, these things are horrendously frightening.
As metallurgy improved, barrels could be made longer, increasing accuracy and power. They progressed from taking down walls to taking out soldiers, replacing the bow and arrow.
A typical arrow would get stuck in this sort of material, where ball just goes straight through. So compared to a bow and arrow, this is far more deadly.
During the 100 Years' War, there was even a precursor to the machine gun, the Ribauldequin.
She's got several barrels on her. This is the sort of gun that would have been very much against people being able to spread your shot out and hit large numbers of people in one go.
Gunpowder revolutionized warfare throughout the 100 Years' War, changing the way battles were fought forever. Thanks to the explosive force of cannon fire, the French were close to victory in this century-long war. But in a final grasp at power, the English dispatched a fresh army, equipped with their tried and tested longbows. Formigny would be a trial of old versus new, to determine the fate of France. English commander Sir Thomas Kyriel sent a large expedition to crush the French in Normandy. The village of Carentan was directly in their path. Massively outnumbered, the French skirmishers near Carentan would give their lives to weaken the English. fought bravely, the French skirmishers could only slow the English advance. The main body of the French army finally arrived in the river valley. The French now needed to locate and destroy the English army. But they would face a well-entrenched enemy with several local garrisons.
Où donc m'envoyez-vous? Nous délaissons ce milieu.
The French destroyed the garrison at Ricbeck.
Je fais votre commandement. Je vais devant, ridez derrière. Diego, jamais. Lançons le commandement. Si sera fait selon votre commandement.
French forces found a detachment of the English army attacking the town of Ballon. If they could stop the attack, they might gain valuable resources. With the English attack on Boulogne halted, the citizens moved to support the French army.
Je fais votre commandement. Diego, Samuel. Je vais devant. Ridez, avez-vous? J'attends les... Voyez bien. Fais ici les commandements. En avant. Que sont les commandements? Que sont les... Avez-vous? J'attends les commandements. Nous allons avouer. Ainsi soit fait. Allons plus que le pas. Nous attendons si sera fait selon votre commandement. Je fais votre commandement. L'ennemi nous prend bien fait.
Mes compagnons, ça. Escale les choses. J'entendais. Soudain, et ici de nouvelles commandements.
Les coups de étaient bien clairs. En avant, reste tous en mesnée.
Où dois-je? Je fais comme il vous plaise. Dois-je rider? Avez-vous commandement pour moi?
Nous délaissons ce milieu. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Voyez bien, votre instinct est bien clair. Allons plus que le pas. Je fais mesni. Nos destriers rongent votre esdite est bien clair. Tiens-vous, Samuel. J'attends ainsi soit fait. Tiens-vous, Samuel. Votre esdite est bien clair. Voyez, encelons et ridons. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Nos destriers rongent leur frein.
The English base at Saint-Sauveur fell to the French forces, but the enemy army was still at large.
Avez-vous guéri un continent? Une joyeuse coursée. Encelons et ridons. Je fais votre commandement. Nous attendons les commandements. Dois-je rider? J'y ride à part main. L'ennemi nous assaut de longues traites. Les costumiers, allons, je fais votre commandement. Nous délaissons ces spuilieux. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Votre esdite est bien clair. Déforalez vos armes, juste à l'ennemi. Je vais devant, ridez derrière. Je fais votre commandement. Il n'en restera ainsi soit fait. En avant, reste tous en mesni.
Votre boulouère guide occitel et votre bon plaisir.
Nous allons avoir les commandements. Prêt pour les corps. Allons, que le pas. J'attends les commandements. J'y ride un continent. Voyez bien de l'avant. Reste tous en mesni. Nous délaissons ce spuilieux. Je vais devant. Ridez derrière. Je suis archier. Dois-je rider? Tiens-vous, voyez bien. Délaissons ces spuilieux. J'attends les chefs votre commandement.
Oui, ainsi sera fait.
Je vais devant, ridez derrière. Avez-vous commandement pour moi? Dievus à moi. J'y ride à part main. Nous allons avoir les commandements. Je fais votre commandement. Allons plus que le pas. Ainsi soit fait. En avant, reste tous en mesnée.
The French forces located Kyriel's English army at a river crossing near the town of Formigny.
Votre esthète est bien faite. Diego, ça va. Je fais votre commandement. Je vais devant, pris derrière. Allons plus que le pas. Diego, ça va. Votre esthète est bien claire. Si sera fait selon votre commandement. Ainsi soit fait. En avant, reste tous en mesnée. Ainsi sera fait selon votre commandement. Je vais devant, pris des derrière. Nous délaissons ces lieux. En avant, reste tous en mesnée. Les coustiniers sont prêts.
Soudain, soyez prêts. Je fais vos commandements. J'obéis à vos stratégies.
Voyez bien les commandements.
Several of the Bureau brothers' heavy guns and other forces arrived to help.
C'est quasi à souche. Les soldats. Oui, je l'emprunte.
Aux arbalètes, arbalétriers.
À l'arçon, piquez les deux.
Causez-vous, ne clamez pas.
Tout est ordonné. Les engins se meuvent. Dicte-nous quelqu'un t'en abattre. Engin de siège, assis. Will, à part main. Ainsi soit-il.
Gloire éthique bien.
Ayez cœur, allez, lancier.
Arbalétriers, suivez.
Even with their cannons, the French faced the difficult task of engaging the well-positioned English army.
Les engins de siège sont prêts. Point de faille, votre trait. Quelle triompheuse victoire! Ils sont anéantis! Ils vont pâtir de notre ire! Point de faille, votre trait! Les engins sont...
Les soldats.
Ils travaillent sur l'engin!
The French attacks succeeded in drawing the English front line out of position and across the river. Suffering losses, the English front line retreated back across the river.
Ainsi soit-il! Tout est ordonné! Les engins de siège sont prêts!
The French received word that their Breton allies had arrived with their knights and horsemen. Now the two armies could coordinate. The Bretons saw an opportunity to attack the English from the back. As the Bretons attacked, the English had no choice but to pivot their front line, opening their flanks to attack from the French.
Un commandement? Mon sang bouille. Nous attendons vos commandements. Envoyez vers la victoire, mes seigneurs. Ma lance est prête. D'honnêtes commandements.
Soudain, nous avons nos commandements. Ainsi sera fait. Les engins de siège sont... Nous accomplissons vos ordonnances.
Reste, j'incline à votre volonté.
Nos ordonnances.
Ça y est, prêt. Avanzons, fratri mei.
Que vous destriez, je fais votre commandement. Nous attendons, j'y ai cul.
Soudain, très bien.
Arbalétrier, je fais comme il vous plaît.
Soudain, nous avons nos commandements. Advise pour votre... Nous avons les commandements reçus.
Soyez frère, reste, si tel est votre bon plaisir.
Nos ordonnances sont là-dessus.
À l'archon, votre esdite est bien claire.
Fait. Fait ici les commandements. Envoyez soudain, suivez l'artillerie. Tout est ordonné. Engin, c'est l'heure de trêve.
Nous attendons les commandements. Fusiliers, en ordonnance. Nos
lanciers, preniez vos lances.
Soudain, c'est comme vous voulez.
Nos arbalèstes, allons, arbalétrier.
Reste, avançons.
Vous destriez vos... Nous attendons, j'y sera fait, selon votre commandement. L'esdite est bien claire. Le juste est notre
Beset by the French and Bretons, the English beat a hasty retreat toward Formigny. The English survivors entered Formigny. The French would have to take this town to secure victory. With the last English army destroyed and the gates of Formigny thrown open, the French force in Normandy was victorious. Their well-organized forces and superior firepower had brought the arduous 100 Years' War closer to its conclusion. Before the invention of printing in the 15th century, books were painstakingly copied by hand. The finest were illuminated with brilliant colors and real gold. Illuminated text wasn't just for show. Gilded illustrations decorated important passages to highlight their significance.
Gold was used in many medieval manuscripts from early days because it was very expensive and it indicated that the manuscript itself was valuable. The light would reflect from candles or from the sunlight, and so it looked as though the book itself was illuminated. In medieval manuscripts, it looks as though this is solid gold. In fact, it's not. The gold itself is tissue thin.
The solid appearance is achieved by laying the gold on a cushion of plaster mixed with glue, called gesso.
By raising the gold from the surface of the skin, that means that it catches the light even more.
The glue in the gesso is softened by breathing on it.
We then have 3 seconds to get the gold on, and I'm using a burnisher, which is a polished stone, just to make sure that the gold sticks. Then the burnisher is used to polish the gold up. See, it's coming up now. So it's coming nice and shiny.
Next, the miniature is painted.
The base colour will be done first, then the tints and the shades will be added, and finally, the white highlights and the outline, which lifts it and brings the whole thing to life.
The medieval paint box contained pigments from across the world, such as ultramarine from Afghanistan and orpiment gathered from volcanic craters.
It often took a long time to complete these medieval miniatures. This one between a month and 6 weeks, from start to finish.
An entire book could take a team of illuminators several years to complete. Many medieval manuscripts still survive today, fully preserved, with their colours just as vivid as the day they were illustrated. At Formigny, the roar of cannon fire sounded the death knell for England's ambitions in France. King Charles and the Bureau brothers did not let up on the offensive, and in 1453, the English retreated across the Channel. France was finally at peace. More than 100 years had passed since the first English chevauchés had scorched the land. The iconic French knights who fought in those early days would not have recognized their own military a century later. The English longbow, once the scourge of France, was no match for French artillery in the last years of the war. And by 1453, France's border looked very different, growing to encompass territories once claimed by England and their allies. After enduring a century of conflict, France emerged as a transformed nation. The country and its people had persevered and unified into a kingdom that could defend itself. Against all odds, France had won the 100 Years' War.